everybody. Welcome back to Smiling with Erin D. I'm Erin D. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Welcome back to another episode of Movie Bracket Challenge. This is going to be my recap of The Great Mouse Detective. The Great Mouse Detective came out in 1986. This movie is actually based on a time period of 1897, though. I love when Disney does this, that they go back in time to different periods. I particularly like this one because there aren't cars yet, so we see everybody driving around in buggies. So it's really cute. The movie starts where we see people in a carriage, and at the bottom of the carriage, there is a mouse because they're moving around just like us. And in this movie, mouses aren't mouses like we think of them, but they're more like people. So it's so cute. We first meet Olivia and her dad. Her dad owns a toy shop, and he also makes toys. He's a toy maker. And he makes Olivia this really cute toy. It's a flower that goes into a ballerina, and she's totally in love with it, thanking her dad, when all of a sudden there's a big bang on the door. Very scary. Her dad has her hide in one of his cabinets. And then Bigot, one of our villains, kidnaps our toy maker, leaving Olivia all by herself and very scared. We get to meet Dr. David Q. He arrives in one of the buggies, and he's going to go look for a dry place to stay because it's raining outside. He's very cute and very sweet. On his way to find some place that's dry, he hears this crying, and he goes to investigate it. And there he meets Olivia. Olivia is devastated. She has lost her dad, and she's trying to find the detective Basil Baker. And so Dr. David says he's going to help her because she's lost her dad, and he finds out she doesn't have a mom. So off they go. And when they arrive at the detective's house, there is no detective to be found. He's out and about, but the lovely mouse there invites them in to get warmed up. So they come in. Actually, Olivia comes in quite quickly, so quickly that David Q, couldn't even introduce her. She's already making herself comfortable inside next to this big fire. The housekeeper is so in love with Olivia because she is so cute. She takes off her wet hat and wet coat, and she goes, "I'm going to make you some of my best cheese biscuits and some tea to warm up." And then all of a sudden, we see this kind of big mouse come in and acting kind of peculiar. But then he unmasks, and he's our Basil, Detective Basil, that is. And he's not paying much attention to Dr. David or Olivia. He really just has his own thing to do, and he couldn't care less about them. He's checking a bullet and comparing it to a different bullet, and he even ruins the housekeeper's favorite pillows while trying. And guess what? It doesn't match, and he's very disappointed. He goes to sit in his big chair. Olivia has jumped out, and he sits in there, still not wanting to listen to them. Olivia's trying to beg the detective, "Please help me. My father has been lost." And he's like, "I cannot help find lost fathers. Go see your mother." And she's like, "I don't have a mother." And he's like, "Well, I'm not going to go find a lost father." And then she goes, "He wasn't lost. He was taken by a bat." And then this gets the detective's attention. The detective goes, "A bat?" And she goes, "Yeah, a bat with a wooden leg." And that is all the incentive that Detective Basil needs to get on the case. He knows this bat. It's the bat of his arch enemy, and the criminal Ratigan. Ratigan has been on the loose forever, and Detective Basil is determined to catch him. So they're off. And on their way, Detective Basil gets his faithful companion, Toby the dog, who is quite taken with Olivia. And Olivia's quite taken with him. In fact, they're so taken that they're ignoring Detective Basil, who seems quite annoyed by them. But Toby does do what he's told. He sniffs the hat that they have so that they can try to get to the bat. And they're off. They ride Toby. Well, Olivia and Detective Basil ride Toby, and Dr. David seems to just be holding onto his tail. They do get to a toy shop, People's Toy Shop, that is, where they run into a little trouble. The bat is in there, but he's hiding, and he's making quite a distraction so that he can steal Olivia. He gets Olivia and he kidnaps her, and he brings her back to the rat, who doesn't like being called a rat, by the way. We find this out. He thinks of himself as a mouse, that is. Ratigan is thrilled that the bat has kidnapped Olivia because he has Olivia's father. And Olivia's father doesn't want to do what Ratigan wants, which is to make a toy that can act like a person. But why is that? We're going to find out. But now that Ratigan has his daughter, he's going to do what Ratigan wants. So the toy maker makes the toy, and Olivia is stuck in a bottle, and I mean stuck. They put the cork on it and everything. And Dr. David is very concerned back at Detective Basil's. But Basil's on the case. He's going to get Olivia. And he's going to get his rat. He does figure out from a paper the rat has dropped where the rat has been. So he goes to this very, very shady bar. He orders a couple of drinks with Dr. David, and they're both dressed up as fishermen, kind of sailors, not like who they really are, because they're in disguise, you know. And the bartender is suspicious because they've already asked about Ratigan. Not the first thing to say to strangers who you don't know. Well, they decide that they're going to just blend in, but the bartender decides he's going to poison them. Now, the Detective Basil, he catches on to the poison right away, but Dr. David's not so lucky. He drank a little, and he gets a little out of it, and he kind of stumbles around and starts a big old bar fight. While the bar fight's going on, Detective Basil sees his man. He sees the bat, and so he decides he's going to follow the bat. He grabs Dr. David, and they're off. But wouldn't you know it, that bat was just a trap, because Ratigan already knows they're coming. In fact, he teases them that they're 15 minutes behind schedule. So he doesn't have much time to spend with them. He traps Dr. David and Detective Basil in a trap, and it doesn't seem like there's any way for them to escape. Well, that's what it looks like anyway. Ratigan kind of tells them how they're going to be destroyed. He has several ways that he's going to off them. But he's not going to stick around to watch because, well, they were 15 minutes behind his schedule, and he's got to be off. He tells them just a little bit where he's going, and David is very concerned. And Detective Basil, he just kind of worried about himself and in his own head and not really paying attention. But Dr. David says, "What do you think he meant by this?" And he goes, "You haven't figured it out yet? They're going to go hurt our queen." Oh no. So Dr. David, who is a queen enthusiast and a queen loyal, or royal loyal that is, he pushes Detective Basil to figure out a way to get out. And he does. He escapes from the trap, and he even manages to get Olivia out of her bottle, and the three of them are off now to save the queen. The poor queen has been caught by our Ratigan, and Ratigan is going to go feed that queen to a big old fat mean old cat. I love cats, but this cat wasn't very nice. But Detective Basil, Olivia, and Dr. David arrive just in time to save the queen. With that's Toby's help, of course. Toby gets to scare the cat off. And they save the day. But wouldn't you know it, that Ratigan, he's kidnapped Olivia again with his darn old bat, Bigot. I like Bigot's name. So they kidnap her, and Basil, the toy maker now, and Dr. David are all off to save her. They do just in the nick of time, too. And then Ratigan gets caught. He's finally shown to be the rat he really is. And the toy maker and Olivia get to go home. And wouldn't you know it, Dr. David has made such a great impression on the great detective that they become partners. It's a really sweet movie, and I really enjoyed it. And I hope you did too. Let me know. This is my recap of Brave. Brave is a Disney movie, came out in 2012, and it's one of my absolute favorites. We start with this young, red-headed, wild girl from Scotland. She has three younger brothers, and she's just independent and fun. She's very sweet and loving to her brothers. She even steals some snacks for them to eat. You see the bond with them, very, very special. This movie is based on the relationship between a mother and a daughter, though. Meredith wants to grow up and shoot arrows and just ride her horse around the countryside. And her mother wants her to be a princess in the way that she's a princess. And the two just don't communicate well. We start with Meredith growing up and taking lessons from her mother in being a princess. And it doesn't look like Meredith is paying much attention. She doesn't really want to be there. Her brothers get to go off and be kind of mischievous and do what they want, while Meredith has to take lessons. But she is the oldest, and sometimes the oldest, they get a lot more pressure. And Meredith's mother really wants Merida to stay focused on her studies, become the princess she thinks she can be, or knows that is inside Merida, the princess that she is. They just don't see eye to eye in the future. Well, there is a dinner. It seems like any other day for them. They're sitting down. Merida steals some snacks for her brothers. Her dad is telling the story of how he lost his leg to a bear, and the brothers are eating it up and not eating much of their dinner. And her mother is very proper and doesn't like what Meredith has on her plate, which is a bunch of junk food. But as soon as her parents are distracted, she pulls her plate down under the table, and her brothers do not have to eat their disgusting dinner because Meredith has stolen them some snacks. While they're under the table eating those snacks, though, they do tie their father's wooden leg to the table, which we'll see how that works out. Merida is sitting there with her parents, not really enjoying the dinner because her mother's trying to get her to sit up properly, act more like a princess. And then her mother receives 3 letters, and she's very excited about this. And the father's kind of like, okay. And they say, it's time to tell Merida. And Merida goes, tell me what? So the mother sends the brothers off so that they can talk so her father can tell her. But her father's not really interested in telling Merida because he knows that Merida is not going to like this conversation. So her mother finally splits it out. All the other clans are presenting their sons, and they're going to have a tournament to win Merida's hand. Merida is unhappy about this. She's not ready to get married, and she doesn't understand why her mother doesn't see it. And her mother doesn't understand why Merida's not happy to do this. Get married. Isn't that every princess's dream? So Merida storms off. Her father goes to go after her, but when you know it, his foot has been tied to the table and everything comes off and slams to the floor, making a big old mess. And Merida gets to escape without having to listen to any more of this that she doesn't really want to hear. The father and the mother go off into their room where the mother tries to talk. Father's like, no, you have to talk to Merida. What would you say to Merida? He wants her to role play. So we see her role playing what she would say, and at the same time, we see Merida role playing to her horse what she would say to her mother. And neither one of them seems like they want to listen to the other at all. Merida's not ready to get married. She wants to ride her horse, play archery, and just be single and grow up. And her mother wants her to be more of a lady, more of a princess in her eyes. Neither one of them wants to hear what the other has to say. But it's going to come. All the clans people are already coming. So we see the boats arrive, and the 3 different clans show up, and they're going to present their oldest sons that will be in the tournament to win Merida's hand. But win Merida's hand, but not her heart. None of these gentlemen seem like Merida's type at all. All very nice clans people, all very unique in their own way, but none of them seem like they have anything in common with Merida. But while they're presenting, the rules of the tournament get said, and it turns out the oldest of each clan can fight Merida's hand. Well, that makes Merida have an idea. Merida gets to pick which thing in the tournament they'll actually compete on, and she picks archery, her golden thing. So next morning, she's dressed up all properly like her mother likes again, in this very uncomfortable dress that doesn't move. And she's sitting there while all of them compete, and one after the other, they do a little bit better. The last one does hit it right on the dot. Kind of by accident, though, because he doesn't seem like he knows anything about archery. Well, Merida then surprises them. She whips out her wild red hair, and she shows them. She takes an arrow and shoots 3 arrows, one at each of the gentleman's clan's targets, and she makes it right down the middle on all 3. She's won the tournament. Her mother is furious. And Merida doesn't understand. She won, but this could start a war. And her mother understands that, but Merida doesn't. So Merida storms off mad. Her mother tries to talk to her. They end up having a huge fight where Merida rips this beautiful rug that has the family portrait in it, rips it right down the center where her mother is cut off from the family. And Merida's mother throws Merida's bow into the fire. Immediately, both are still angry and don't show each other, but are both sorry. Merida rides off on her horse, and then she ends up meeting a witch who gives her a little bit of a hard time. but ends up giving Merida a bakery item so that she can get her mother to change her mind. Or that's what Merida thinks the caution will do. Merida goes back and feeds her mother this, thinking that this little pastry item is going to change her mind, not change her being. But wouldn't you know, it changed Merida's mother into a bear. And now Merida's got to get her mother out of the castle because her father kills bears. On her way out, trying to get her mother out, her mother runs into her 3 younger brothers who realize this bear is really their mother, and they confront Merida. Merida convinces them to help her get the bear, their mother, out of the castle. So 3 younger brothers do this. On the way out of the castle, they do make quite a bit of a circus with everybody trying to catch the bear, the mother, but they do eventually get out. Merida takes her back to where she had first kind of come enchanted to find the witch, and the mother is on it. She is determined to find this cottage. But again, they're not communicating with each other. They do find the witch's little cottage, and it turns out the witch is gone until spring. But she does leave a message for Merida, that Merida has to fix the bond, fix what has been broken. Merida doesn't understand how to do this, but it's clear to the audience that it's the bond between the mother and daughter. They need to fix their relationship, to mend it. So, mother's mad. Merida's so sorry. But they're going to try and figure it out. And they're going to try and figure it out together. The next morning, after they wake up from the rainstorm, their mother is hungry. She gathers some berries. And it turns out those berries are poison. And Meredith warns her mother. Her mother does not know anything about the wilderness. She had picked wild berries that were poisonous. She had got water with worms in it. But Merida goes, "Don't worry, I'm going to show you." So she takes her mother, the bear, to the water, and she shows her how she can shoot the arrow and get them a fish. Her mother is not impressed. Well, she's impressed that her daughter can catch the fish, but she does not want to eat it raw. So Merida has to cook the fish for her mother, who does enjoy it. So then Merida has to keep catching fish for her mother in that morning because her mother is quite hungry. She's quite a big bear. And finally, she goes to her mother, "No, I'm going to teach you how to do it." And she does. And they have a blast catching the fish together. While they're catching the fish, though, it looks like her mother kind of has shifted into a real bear for a minute. And this was the first time that her mother was not her mother inside the bear. So she realizes this is real. She could really lose her mother, as the witch has warned that they only have a couple days before this becomes permanent. And her mother is no longer her mother. Her mother is really a bear. And they got to mend stuff. Well, they're off kind of having a little bit of adventure. And Meredith falls into what looks like it used to be a banquet room, like what she has at her castle, because they found a castle, or an abandoned castle. Looks very old. When she's looking around, it reminds her of a story that her mother had told her earlier. Why her mother thought she needed to marry. Because years ago, there had been 4 brothers who had split the land. Well, one of the brothers decided that he wasn't happy sharing. So he was going to break all the rules. And breaking the rules had ruined it. And what used to be stable became unstable and broke. And she wonders if this is the castle of the brother who ruined the calmness and the peace. And she remembers what the witch says, that there had been someone before her, a prince, who had asked to be 10 times as strong as any man. And she goes, I wonder if the witch was talking about this prince. And all of a sudden she goes, I wonder if the prince was turned into a bear like her mother. And there he is, the bear, what was once the prince that destroyed the kingdom. And he tries to get Merida. Merida barely escapes with her mother's help, but she has learned a lesson. And she thinks she has an answer to the question. It's the rug that she had destroyed earlier in the fight, that she had separated her mother from them by splitting it right down. She thinks she has to mend this. So she goes back to the castle with her mother. They sneak in. Very unsafe considering everybody wants to get the bear. While she's there, she sees that everybody is fighting. And she realizes what she has done, what her mother had warned her about. So she decides to make peace. She said that she knows that it is her fault and that she is so sorry. And she wants them all to make peace because they were all friends. They all saved each other when strangers had tried to attack them years before from the waters. And they had stuck together and they had made it through. And that's how her father had become king, because they had elected him king because of his bravery. But they were all really friends. And they all realize she's telling the truth and that she has a really good point. So they decide she's right and they stop fighting. Also, Meredith starts to agree to marry them when her mother, still the bear, hiding in the background, says no. And her mother compromises too. She shows Merida what to say. That Merida should be free to make her own choices. That all these young people should be free to make their own choices. And all of them agree. They all want their children to be happy. And you see the love they have for them. And one of those guys from the clan said, we should let our children win each other's hearts, not their hands. So this was beautiful. And I think it's starting to mend their relationship. Now, the bear still has to get out of there. So Merida tricks everybody into going to her father's special wine storage area, and she's able to get her mother out of that room. They go and get the rug. They find out that her brothers are now bears because they probably ate the leftover pastry. Merida is trying to get her mother out of there, but her mother is now again being chased by all the clanspeople. And they've sort of caught her right back where Merida had originally seen the big stones that had led her off to the witch. So they're there. Her mother is tied down. Merida is trying to stop it, trying to tell everybody that's really her mother. When the big, scary bear that Merida had barely escaped before, the prince, shows up to attack Merida. And of course, at that moment, her mother's defenses go up and she goes to protect her daughter and she fights the bear. While she's fighting the bear, she finally defeats him by having one of the big stones fall on him, and he is released from his prison inside this bear. We see the prince. He doesn't really speak, but we know that he wanted to be released. He had been the one to maybe lead Merida to the witch that had ended this story. Merida is happy for a moment with her mother, who is still a bear. And the ghost goes off, or the spirit. Merida, realizing the sun is about to come up, grabs the rug that she has now stitched back together and throws it over her mother. But her mother is still a bear. She doesn't understand. She's mended everything the way she thought, the rug. But has she mended their hearts? So Merida, as the sun is coming up, apologizes to her mother, tells her mother she's so sorry for what she has done. Her mother is hugging her as she is a bear, and Merida is crying, and everybody is sad because this is Merida's mother, and she's about to lose her forever. But just as gives her whole heart, opens her whole heart up and tells her mother the absolute truth, there it happens. Her mother turns back into her mother. And her brothers turned back into her brother. Her mother was wrapped up in this rug because otherwise she would have been naked. Her father runs over, hugs her mother. They're rejoicing. Her mother whispers to her father, I'm naked. So her father has everybody else turn back around saying, gives them some privacy. But the brothers are naked and they run around. And then we see them all back at the castle, enjoying life and being happy. Meredith has won her own heart and won her mother's and mended this. It's such a beautiful story and one of my favorites. I love how the princess doesn't need a prince. She doesn't need a clansman to win her heart. She's enough on her own. It's one of my favorite Disney movies, and let me know if it's your vote. Don't forget to vote, 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 comment section, and our community page.